Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what is known as the Access Fellow at Jesus College here at the University of Oxford. I'm commonly asked, because I've been working in admissions here at Oxford for 15 years, how is it you're supposed to be competitive at universities like this that receive tons of applications? So if I've got a big old stack of applications on my desk, how do you make it such that yours drifts to the top of the pile and you stand out from the crowd? It's a really interesting question, and it raises all sorts of quite troubling and demanding questions along the lines of, am I good enough? Am I made of the right stuff? Am I able to crush the opposition? And all these sorts of quite dramatic turns of phrase. And my answer to that question historically and today would always be no. I'm not a particularly competitive person in the sense that I'm willing to gouge people's eyes and make a comparative advantage by stamping on people's heads, nor am I particularly confident in my abilities. So, given that I know the YouTube algorithm really well by now, I'm not going to reveal the secret straight off, but I'm going to make you wait for it. But I will tell you what I think is the key to being successful and competitive at universities like this that routinely receive about 24,000 applications every year. So the competitiveness of top universities like Oxford can bring to mind comparisons with things like, competing in the Olympics or going for these sort of elite military units, special forces and stuff like that. Those comparisons are massively overblown. So although we receive about 24,000 applicants every year, we admit about 3,500. So the average number of applicants per place is about 6 or 7 to 1. So the odds, the chances of getting into Oxford are vastly better than elite sports or elite military units. And indeed, that word elite is highly problematic in this context because it brings to mind this idea that it's not just whether or not you are the best at thinking, but also whether you have had some sort of social privilege, whether you have socially exclusive benefits. In other words, we're not a socially elitist university. We have students who have come from homelessness, we have students who have been refugees, we've had students who've been estranged from their families, people who are incredibly vulnerable and would not under any circumstances be described as socially elite, have come and thrived at universities like Oxford. So that is not the key to being competitive at a university like this. It's not about your social background. And indeed, it's not about your genetics. So where genetics would matter an awful lot for sports and military units, it doesn't here because there's no smartness gene or genes that have been identified. And so succeeding at a university like this is much more about how you develop particular key skills and how you grow your brain through your actions rather than how you've been gifted with something from nature. So it means that many more of us could be competitive at universities like this, even if you may not be aware of it yourself. There are some useful lessons that can be learned from elite sports and elite military units. First of all, they're very interested in the whole self. So they're interested in self-care. They would, for example, audit, am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating enough good food? Am I well hydrated enough? Those are sort of things that people, when they're committing to be competitive in academic environments, often neglect and to their cost. Your health will affect your brain's functioning. So thinking about those things is very important. Another way in which the military and sports can help inform practices in universities is that they are collaborative. There's a slight irony to being competitive in those fields. You actually need to work with lots of other people. And that is exactly the same in competing in a top university like this. You're not stepping on each other's heads, you're not gouging each other's eyes, you are actually trying to help each other out, because if you've got a group of friends who are similarly interested in a subject to you, then you will go further and do better. The military and sports are also particularly good at figuring out marginal improvements to obtain a comparative advantage. Now what that means is that they figure out how they can make a tiny little adjustment every single day to improve their skills. And we should think about that as well. There's a bit of simple mathematics you can do about this. Take 1.01 to the power of 365 and you get a figure of just under 38, meaning that if you improve your skills by 1 percentage point every day for a year, you'll get 38 times improvement in your skills. If, however, you slip by 1% every day, so that's 0.99 to the power of 365, your skills will deplete to practically nothing. Okay, and that's another thing to bear in mind. It's not about how you do these sort of big endurance tests, it's how you just chip away every day at building up those skills that will make you a more powerful thinker. And that's what the military and sports would teach us, and that's something that we can transfer to this sort of environment. So what therefore is the secret to being competitive at a top university like this? Well, it is passion. And I know you're probably hearing that quite a lot, and you probably think, oh, what nonsense, what self-indulgent drivel, how can you just do stuff that you love and succeed at it? Well, because then you will commit to that daily uptick in your skills level. That's how you get better at things day by day, and you're motivated to do it. And so, ironically, the people that are most likely to get into university like this are the ones that are least concerned about whether they even come here or not, because what they really care about is studying their subject, and they could do that anywhere. And I learned this myself. When I applied to Cambridge as a young man, I didn't get in because I was trying to fill a hole in my soul that I thought was there. And I thought that would be filled if I applied to Cambridge, because I would then be a better person. I would be competing with other people. But my approach to competitiveness was all wrong. What happened was then I went to Bristol University. I fell in love with the study of politics, and I applied to Oxford, not particularly caring whether I went to Oxford. I would have been happy anywhere, because all I loved at that stage was politics. And that's how to get better academically. You just care about developing your interest and your passions and your love for a particular subject. And then your skills will develop as true as night follows day. It doesn't matter about your nature or your genes or your background or the wealth of your parents. It matters how passionate you are and what you're willing to do in pursuit of that passion. So go and find that passion. It's not something that will find you. You need to go and develop it, and it will come, and those skills will develop, and you will be super competitive for a place like this.